Hello and welcome. Good day, everyone. I'm M.Sharaf Eldin, and today I have the pleasure of hosting Christine Galler, Master Certified
Hello.
Coach with a past career in multinational companies. Good morning, Christine, and
Good
thank you first.
morning, Sharaf.
Thank you first for accepting the invitation and for hosting this show. Now it's the fifth episode that we have for
Yeah.
emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
and for the next half of hour, we'll be talking about optimism
Yeah,
and
that's right.
yeah, and how this impacts the emotional intelligence, and how pessimism and optimism at the same time impact our unpredictable reality. This is very
Okay.
important. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Sharaf. So that's really a pleasure for me being here. And in those very specific times, I would say that optimism is really a key resources we need to have, and simply to keep us going. I know that some people and some of you might be skeptical. So let me start immediately from a very different angle. Let's start from pessimism. When you think about a business perspective or a business initiative, Sarah, and you start to have some pessimistic view about it, okay, what can happen consequently?
Well, I guess most of the people will be de-energized. They will not. There will be some passive aggressiveness. Somehow they will not show energy. This their energy will be depleted. Going moving forward and energizing each other to achieve the goal. There will be something
Yeah,
like a bomb in the place.
yeah, exactly. And what I observe usually is that pessimistic people tend to justify their views by simply stating that they are realistic. Okay, meaning in a way that all the others are not. Okay, or that simply fools. And usually these hold them back from embracing opportunities, from seeing the positive in things, and so that focus seems to be mainly on all the reasons why this won't work. Okay, so when we start acting this way, how is our energy level? What do you think about our energy level?
It's normally low, and actually, I feel irritated sometimes, especially when we're putting some ideations, Christine.
Yeah,
It's I feel like and somebody starts with this pessimistic energy.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I guess it has a lot of impact on, I would say as well, innovation, on the way people look at the future. Okay, and it's contagious. Actually, all our emotions are contagious. So when you're pessimistic and you are managing a team, it's clearly that the day you are down, okay, you're going to contaminate others. And this will surely impact their abilities to take initiatives, to take some risks. Okay, actually, if you think about it, pessimism tends to freeze people. Okay, people will then become reluctant to make decisions. Okay, they will take a longer time for deciding eventually, or they will simply stay in their comfort zone. That's the reason why I really look at pessimism as being, in a way, uh, the I would say the enemy of innovation,
Well,
because
mm, that's a very hardcore statement.
yeah, I know,
Enemy
I know,
of
but if
innovation is
you
the enemy of the state.
yeah, but if you think about innovation has to do with thinking upfront about the future and quite far
Mhm.
away. Okay. And when you
Yeah,
do that, you cannot be sure of anything. You can have
yeah,
some, let's say, elements of the present that are going to tell you, okay, this might work. But there's a big part, if it's a big destructive innovation, that there's a big part of it, okay, big chunk of it, where all consumer research that you might do won't give you any proof that that's going to work. So
yeah,
in a way, you have to bet and use the information you have in that at that time in the best way you can. But if you start from using that information, stating immediately, no, 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 I want to be conservative, no, 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 I believe that that's going to work, that's not going to work, okay, for sure, you're not going to do a disruptive innovation. What you're going to do is something far more limited, an evolution of a product or an evolution of a service, but not a real innovation.
Yeah. Normally, what I understand, innovation is really comes up with very lousy. All new ideas are, are are dumb. In a way, they look in the beginning very, very very awkward. So, but there is, of course,
Yeah,
some, what they call it, benefit of being pessimistic. It serves them right. People who are labeled as being pessimistic inside the organizations, and I may tell that there is some wisdom. Sometimes they're the voice of wisdom for the organization.
yeah,
When
yeah, yeah.
so what kind of positive pessimism, that, or maybe something that, how we can use pessimism to actually to balance with optimism.
But I guess that in a way, pessimism has a role. It's a bit like we can use it like doing hypothesis, like what if scenarios. Pessimism is here actually to help us seeing risks, potential
Mhm.
issues, and not only the benefits, or the opportunities. So because of that, it's kind of in a way a survival kind of tool that we have. Okay, it helps us to stay realistic in a way. So in a certain way, realism gives us the chance, to evaluate both positive and negative factors in a balanced way, to support our decision making. So pessimism has a role to play. But what happens is that when we have a small dose of pessimism, it works well because it balances. Okay. But when the pessimism is our main attitude, then it impacts heavily our chances of success.
Yeah, that's a very accurate description. So maybe we will talk about pessimism like realism. That's what
Mhm.
the part that's invited. I may have read in other, articles or literature, it's about stoicism or something, how to use
Yeah.
it in building, it supports, because actually sometimes, so maybe we need some more focus on optimism to understand out more what is the healthy, kind of optimism that we're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I guess that but you could also tell us something about stoicism. Why don't you? Let's
Well,
exchange.
I don't have much. I just read about it, in some articles and some, books. It's just about, thinking realistically about things before, and validating scenarios
Yeah,
and options before
yeah.
moving forward. It is the same, notion. It's a philosophy that's behind, the way of thinking. Yeah,
The
but
way of
it's not.
thinking.
Yeah, I cannot actually, it's. I just want to relate, some popular terms currently
Yeah, yeah.
with yeah,
Okay,
with what you're bringing from the teachings of Martin Seligman. Thank you for that.
okay. You're,
Yeah.
you're welcome. And so optimism, what is that? How can we define that? Well, it's in a way a mentality of hope. Sometimes uh, we cannot really clearly see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if we believe that there will be some solutions or alternative, even if at the moment we can't really name them, okay,
Mm.
our brain will start activating our creativity, and so we will avoid to stay stuck, you know,
Mm.
into a situation.
Okay.
But there's, you know, uh, you see, optimism has to do really with the fact of believing that there are other options and possibilities, even if at the moment, well, you don't see them. Okay, even if at the moment you're saying, what could they be? Because if you accept the idea that there are some new possibilities around, you're going to look for them actively.
Yeah.
You're going to search for them. Okay, and then that's going to let's say change the focus of your energy. So your energy, instead of going into the defensive way, okay, it's going to put the energy towards, okay, what could I do constructively to get out of a certain situation?
Yeah. I believe that's, what you are saying here, and what you are writing in the ticker down there is, optimism is the mentality of hope. It
Yeah,
actually opens doors to set new objectives, to find meaning in life, to actually to bring, some belief that there is something good in the world. That's
yeah,
what you are
exactly,
describing,
exactly.
and it's
Yeah,
something that we hope that all humanity can
yeah,
embrace. And
yeah.
that's why I would ask you, so if we are mostly taught or educated, or our cultures are dragging us into being more pessimistic, realistic, so how
Hmm.
can we move from this to
To
optimism, especially with the high depression rate that we are seeing, with
yeah,
suicides, with
yeah.
things that, people are not finding real meanings in their life. So what can you actually do with people to support them actually to move from pessimism to optimism?
To optimism. But I guess, we let me tell you about the work that Martin Seligman did, on
Mm.
learned optimism. Okay, so actually, according to Martin Seligman, who is the father of positive psychology, uh, let's say that optimism can be cultivated. Okay, so we
Wow.
can learn how to make it grow. And his view on it is that usually when we are facing obstacles or hurdles, okay, uh, we tend to do one thing, Um, we might have a pessimic view, and the pessimic view of us has to do with what he calls the 3P theory. So being permanent, pervasive, and personal. And what does it mean, actually? But let's take permanent first. Okay. Permanence has to do with the fact that, well, you believe that there's nothing that's going to last forever. Okay, this obstacle, this challenge, and that the fact that you start saying to yourself, well, that's going to last forever. My whole life is ruined. It will never change. The second P has to do with being pervasive. Pervasive. It means that you tend to thinking, well, that's impacting my whole life. It's my total business is totally impacted. That's really a total disaster. And you have this impression, you feel oppressed, and you have this impression that there's no escaping way. Okay. The last P is talking about has to be with being personal. Okay, being personal could be, well, you believe that, well, it's all your fault. Okay, it's all because of you. Okay, so you take the full blame on you. Another one is feeling that you are powerless at the same time. Okay, so you really believe that, well, there's nothing you can do. So, the real point is how to switch from that set of thinking things as being permanent, pervasive, and personal to something else that helps you to have a more positive view. But let me ask you, I guess that probably it has happened as well to you in your life,
Yes.
Sharaf. Okay, that you had at least one of the three Ps.
Yeah.
And
That, yeah, it's sure. It's when it comes, mostly it's about the, this kind of personal. When I
yeah,
take this personal, this is where I feel like, when I put myself,
yeah,
versus the problem. This is where I actually, sometimes when I dissociate myself from the problem and look at myself, as the unlimited possibilities and having the power. It
yeah,
always changes things. So it's
yeah, yeah,
when this personal critique comes in and starts, biting you from the inside.
yeah,
It keeps
exactly.
you somehow. Sometimes it pushes you it puts you in a powerless position.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you feel like frozen. Okay, so
Yeah,
your energy is very much down. Okay,
yeah,
it's like it's like the effect of stress on us. It's
yeah.
like, so you switch off your creativity,
Yeah.
and when you
Uh, uh,
switch off your creativity, how to find solutions?
yes, and I would love to ask you. What is the most dominant P that you find while working in different teams, companies, with different organizations?
Well, the story of being permanent,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And there are two things actually. Often it's what Seligman said. Well, each time for each of the P's, there's the permanent bad and the permanent positive. good,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the permanent pervasive and the pervasive good as well. And so what it means is that some people, when they tend to be very pessimistic, they tend to think that all the factors that are negative factors will last forever, okay, and will
Mm-hmm.
last for long, okay. While
Yeah.
the ones that are positive, they tend to kind of ignore them, redimension them, so make them very small. Okay.
Yeah.
And what I can see is that there are some functions, that have to really take care about risk.
Mm-hmm.
Think about people working in finance, actually. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very often they have to work when they do business cases also on worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay. So the point is that there's nothing bad with it. That's very healthy to think about, the best case, kind of in between case, and your worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But the real point is being aware and pay attention to the fact not to focus only on the worst case scenario, because otherwise you're not going to take any opportunity. You will stop taking risk. You will stop investing. So you will stop moving the business forward.
Yeah. And this kind of permanent, I guess if it's there inside teams or organizations, sometimes it's a collective myth about the conditions. It's
Yeah.
in the culture itself, they have a myth around who they are and what context they are in, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's very hard to give up this kind of collective beliefs, to
Yeah.
work on a
Yeah.
permanent problem. It's really, I can understand. So what kind of steps do you take with them to start moving from this
Well,
place?
the very first step, I have them speaking out, so voicing out, okay, what
Mm,
they feel, what their thoughts are, okay, what their emotions are in that very moment, and I have them as well to remember about their actions when they were in that kind of pessimistic mood
okay.
and the consequences. So we start from that. Okay. And
Mhm.
then we move actually to another aspect that Seligman proposes, because he doesn't just say, well, there's an issue. Okay. He says, well, you might need to move from, let's say, permanent to temporary, or from pervasive to isolated, or from being powerless to the effort. So this is what he calls the TIE acronym. And for him, well, let's say moving from permanent to temporary, what does it mean? Actually, it's starting to say, well, okay, I'm quite sure I'm challenging my assumption that it's going to last forever. So, what kind of questions can we ask ourselves when we want to challenge that? What do you think, Sharaf?
Well, I guess if I want to change it to temporary, I will see
Mm-hmm.
when other times when we didn't have this challenge, when
Okay.
we had the right to experience, or had these experiences when we didn't have this challenge with us, and we actually achieved our optimistic goal or ambition or hope,
Yeah.
and this was never an issue at these moments, or these
Mhm.
stories.
So
So
for sure,
maybe.
you
Mm,
can, yeah, you can go back to your success story, okay,
yes.
to your previous
Yeah.
success story. That's a very positive thing. Another thing you can do is say, okay, but if I don't believe that's gonna really last forever, so let's make a guess. Okay, let's try to understand how long it might last, and let's put a certain number of let's put a time frame around it. Okay.
Mhm.
And you see, it changes already the whole thing, because you know that there might be an end to it.
Yeah.
But when we talk about being pervasive and moving from pervasive to isolated, so we said, well, pervasive is about saying, well, it's ruining everything. Okay. Isolated is about to say, okay, I challenge that assumption and I start to ask myself, okay, but what is being hurt in my business really, or in my life? Uh, and you start so identifying the area. Okay.
Yeah.
And once you have done that, okay, you ask yourself, but okay, so what are all the other areas of my business or my life that remain untouched?
Mhm.
You know, and suddenly you realize that, well, okay, it's not that it's a total disaster. Okay, it has impacted a certain, let's say, area of your business, of your life. not everything.
Hmm.
I guess, it changes really the perspective because, just by talking to you right now, I'm just feeling, deeply inside me a kind of relief.
Hmm. Yes.
It's like opening up, breathing again.
Yeah.
Okay. Suddenly saying, okay, so we can look also with a certain trust. Okay, we can look at the future with this being trustful. Okay,
Yes.
so that helps me quite a lot, I have to say. You know,
Hmm.
and so if we think about, let's say, sometimes in business, what can happen? Okay, if one of
Yeah.
our actions is failing commercially, can
Mm.
we also say immediately that the whole project is ruined? Or can we simply look at it by saying, okay, now there are maybe some aspects that can be fixed. Let's look at what is also working.
Yes.
And so let's dispatch, make the separation between what is working currently and what is not.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
just put the focus on, let's say, fixing what is not working.
Yes, and that's
So,
that's really really important because actually some teams and organizations when they look at a problem or something they disconnect they actually disconnect their power totally
mhm,
by looking at it as if it is a holistic problem, it's a pervasive problem, it's something that's already challenging them to move forward or maybe take any action,
yeah,
and they don't see that it is just, and if you they just do this kind of fix in one process or
mm,
fix in one procedure, or maybe doing a
yeah,
quality check or setting a KPI somewhere, or
mhm,
maybe doing a report, something like a reporting system and a new reporting system or a new way of collaboration may
yeah,
turn everything around.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
somehow they miss this, and they just not just shut down on the business, they actually blame everyone that's they're not good enough,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not. Yeah.
without considering the positive that are happening.
Yeah.
Because that's also something very important. I have in mind, well, someone that uh, having in mind one entrepreneur. Okay, and I remember very well that his view was to say, well, I've launched my business some few years ago, and now that we were really, let's say, at break even, okay, and so that we were starting money, well, the COVID came in, okay, and it seems that we have to rebuild everything from scratch. And his view was terrible. He was also blaming on himself about, well, should I have opened up that kind of business? I could have done something different. Okay, and he was feeling really bad. Okay, while working, this way, on working on his optimism, starting first to understand that, well, maybe he was not so much pessimistic. There were, for instance, he had a good self-esteem, for instance. Okay, which helps very much being optimistic. Okay, because it
Hmm.
avoids you to start blaming everything on yourself. Okay, and
Yeah.
acknowledging that as well, that there are also external circumstances. So
Yeah.
he started to change a little bit his mentality, opening up. Okay,
Hmm.
and I have to say that he's doing far better. The business is picking up. He's able to see the positives. Each time they take an order.
Hmm.
So he has really changed his view, and he's working on it. And he's working on changing his view. So you see, there's one thing that has to do as well with the last letter. When you say, well, you switch then from feeling powerless to making an effort. What does it mean? Is that sometimes you tend to believe that there's nothing you can do. And so when you want to challenge that, what are the kind of questions you would ask, Sharaf?
Well, I would tell what's in my circle of control, what's in and what can I influence, what can I actually work on, what's the next move, maybe what
Yeah.
other things I can work on,
Mm-hmm.
what are my strengths that I have that can actually maybe doing a SWOT analysis, maybe
Yeah.
something. There are many tools,
Yeah.
looking from part. This we sometimes I call it with my clients moving
Yeah.
from particle mentality to to space mentality. This is
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is also very nice, you know. And there's another thing, I guess, that you can I would add to that is the fact that take the little steps, kind of, I would say, um, attitude.
Mm.
Okay, so you fix small goals, and each time you acknowledge for yourself that okay, you've made that first step and it has gone quite well. Okay, and in a way, you congratulate yourself. So instead of ticking simply a box and going to next,
Hmm.
just take some few moments to acknowledge the fact that that piece went quite well, and that gives you it's like building up a pile of positive events that
Hmm.
nurture then your optimism, gives you courage as well, to face difficulties.
Yeah. So it's again to going back to one step at a time,
Yeah, yeah.
less is more, and having, small goals,
Yeah,
and it makes a big difference in the end. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It makes a
So,
big difference. And if you want to try to sum up all what we've said, is that at the end what we've said is okay. We Pessimism hurts potentially our success, but pessimism helps us as well to be realistic. Okay, so we need to find the right balance between pessimism and optimism. But what we also know from research is that optimism is a big factor of success for us. And
yeah.
so, and we know that from research. So, as we know, and actually, talking about that emotional intelligence test that measure that factor. But not only, Seligman made an experiment. It worked with a big insurance company. Okay. And what they did is that, they were spending a lot of money each year in hiring people.
Mm.
And because it's not so easy to sell life insurance, so door to door, okay, a lot of those people were, after a few months or few years, leaving the company. Okay, and that was a big cost for that insurance company. And so they decided to recruit people with
Mm.
a high level of optimism. And
Mhm.
what has happened is that they started to make a small difference the first year. Okay, so they were overperforming the pessimistic a little bit, not more. But as from the second year, they were about half, 50% above in terms of turnover, the pessimistic people.
Mhm.
So you see, it shows that optimism helps you as well to be more, um, let's say, resistant. It helps your resilience building.
Mhm.
So, having said that, I guess that we're close to the end of our talk today. Okay,
Yeah.
Sharaf, anything you'd
Yeah.
like to add?
Well, I just maybe have two questions, but I'm not sure if time will save us for this. So
Maybe
when
take
is
one.
optimism? Yeah, one of them is when is optimism? Yani is overdone. I may have heard about the optimism bias. And how it may actually, without this realism, it may not be
Mhm.
really. So I just wanted to shed some light on that. When is too much optimism is anything, or too much of anything. Is unhealthy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, when optimism is not good, well, let's say that you thought you had a very good business idea, okay,
Mhm.
and the results are not coming. Okay,
Mhm.
so one very optimistic way could be to say, well, no, but it's just a matter of waiting time. Okay. But
Mhm.
if you keep on having proofs that things are not working, or if you still hear your sales guys or your clients telling you that's not going to work or it's not working, it's better just to simply say, okay, I take note. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change my strategy. I'm going to change my business. So it has to do with stay factual,
Mhm.
double check, make some reality checks. You can have a positive, let's say, mentality of hope, finding solutions, finding alternatives. That's very positive and it helps you. But once you want to try something very innovative or something like starting up a new business, well, look at what you get in terms of evidences that are positive evidences and wrong evidences as well, the bad ones. and try to think, okay, how am I gonna? What does it tell me
Yeah.
about me and that idea and that business? Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe the market's not ready.
So a little bit of realism is important when it comes to optimism, healthy
Yeah, for
optimism.
sure, for sure, for sure.
Oh,
It tells you, okay, it's a kind of way to ensure our survival.
yeah. So
All right.
what can be maybe a closing, like a wrap up for this beautiful 30 minutes, about optimism?
So the wrap up is exactly what you said. Looking at things from a pessimistic view doesn't bring success. It keeps
Mm,
you into your comfort zone, and so it limits your innovation. Looking at things from a radical, let's say, optimistic view, might
mm,
take you in a path which is very risky. So you need to stay more optimistic than pessimistic, okay, and use part of it, of pessimism, let's say, to be realistic. But the real thing is to do not let pessimism contaminate everything. Because if you want to lead people and have people really fully charged of energy with you, okay, you need to be optimistic. Okay. So that would be it. Thank you
okay.
very much. Okay,
Thank you.
Sharaf.
Thank you,
Okay.
Christine. It's really
Thank.
appreciated.
All right. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, guys. Well, we'll see you during our next episode. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.